But for a lot of us, actually, it's still this area of cloud across central areas, and that will just spread its way a little bit further eastwards. And as we go into the afternoon, actually, many parts seeing some cloud around, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce some showers, mainly focused across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. For most, it's a warmer feeling day. Could see highs reaching around 21, 22 down towards the southeastern corner. Into Tuesday, a very similar day. A lot of dry weather around, but there will be some showers. This line of showers will just gradually spread its way a little bit further southwards as we go through the course of the day, and then later on some blustery showers working into the far northwest of Scotland. Wednesday, similar still, but then on Thursday we could see a longer spell of rain arriving from the west throughout the day.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of...
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB Newsroom. Nadine Dorries has accused Rishi Sunak of whipping up a public frenzy against her, says she doesn't have the X factor of a winning Prime Minister. In a blistering resignation letter, the former minister accused Mr Sunak of demeaning his office by criticising her. She says his government has abandoned conservatism and the 2019 election manifesto, which was published before Boris Johnson won an 80-seat majority. A by-election will now take place in the usually safe Tory seat of Mid-Bedfordshire. Labour Shadow's Secretary for Women and Equalities, Annalise Dodds, told GB News that Nadine Dorries makes some valid points.
Although I disagree with Nadine Dorries on many things, when she says that we currently have a zombie parliament, and when she asks
what Rishi Sunak stands for and what he's achieved, I think many people will be saying they don't understand either. And I think this is incredibly damaging when, as we know, our country's in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We have a crisis in our NHS, crisis of crime on our streets, and yet we seem to have a zombie government that just can't get a grip.
Firefighters say the government has shown callous disregard for the safety of those on board the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Fire Brigades Union has sent a pre-action protocol letter to the Home Secretary outlining its concerns over safety aboard the vessel, which is currently docked at Dorset's Portland port. The union previously branded the barge a potential death trap. It's now demanding a response to its legal letter by Thursday. Russian investigators say genetics tests confirm Yevgeny Prigozhin died in a plane crash on Wednesday. The Wagner boss was on the passenger list of a private jet that crashed north of Moscow months after a failed rebellion against Russia's military. Mikhail Yazganov was Prime Minister of Russia from 2000 until 2004. He told GBNews this morning that Prigozhin had put unforgivable pressure on Putin over his management of the Ukraine war. A breach in the Met Police's IT system could cause incalculable damage in the wrong hands. That's according to the Police Federation. Scotland Yard says it's aware of unauthorised access to the IT system of one of its suppliers. They're now working with the company to ascertain whether data may have been breached. The company had access to names, ranks, photos, vetting levels and pay numbers, but not personal details such as addresses. And finally, residents of a road in London which avoids the ULEZ charge say they're being offered £100 a month by people hoping to avoid the emission fee. People living along Moor Lane in Chessington are being asked by motorists to use their driveways. While the road remains charge-free, turning off at any point would incur the £12.50 daily fee for non-compliant vehicles. The expansion of ULEZ aims to improve air quality and from Tuesday will be expanded into Greater London. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Free Speech Station.
Donald Trump's mugshot goes viral, a terrible pun wins Best Joke of the Edinburgh Fringe, and Nadine Dorries goes out in a blaze of glory. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and of course we'll have the latest from those lovable culture warriors. No chance of them taking any time off over the summer holidays, I'm afraid, but coming up on the show tonight, would a Labour government be a threat to gender-critical free speech? I'll be asking that question to campaigner Maya Forstata and Mark Gledening from the Institute of Economic Affairs. The family of former PM William Gladstone have apologised for their ancestors' links to the slave trade. A worthwhile and heartfelt gesture or ludicrous virtue signalling? Joining me to debate this will be author Tim Stanley and activist Femi Nylander. And trans ideology has even reached Iceland. We're going to be hearing about how the former Prime Minister of the country had to help an LGB organisation stage a conference after other venues were forced to cancel it. And of course, myself and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our delightful studio audience. My studio guests this evening are Bruce Devlin and Francis Foster. Good. You know, I've been in Miami, so...
look how you just dropped that.
It wasn't even subtle.
No,
I just sort of threw it down like an anvil.
Yeah, you did.
What have you been doing?
I have been perusing the comments on my YouTube channel.
Never do it. Never look below the line.
I know. You know what somebody said they nailed me beautifully, actually. Oh, yeah. They said... someone wrote underneath one of my interviews about me, this man looks like Louis Theroux with brain damage.
Interesting. I'm sorry for writing that. I couldn't resist it.
Yeah.
Bruce, what have you been up to?
I have been in a social threesome with two women, I know. Maureen Lipman and Rula Lenska. I met them last night.
Now, I've always wanted to meet Rula Lenska. And Maureen Lipman.
Oh, Maureen Lipman, because I kind of staggered over and I said to her, do you remember that Victoria Wood sketch that you did about being divorced with whoever and the instant mashed potato and the hamsters in the cage? And she went, no. And I said, well, fine, it was some of your best work, so you might want to go and watch it. And don't be so ungrateful.
So you managed to offend her immediately?
No, she was fine. Rula was a bit needy. I said,
I can imagine Rula being a bit needy.
Yeah.
But if you imitate a cat, she'll be fine with that. Do you remember when she did that with George Galloway?
No, I do, actually.
Yeah, it was great. Great televisual moment. You should all watch it. If it's on YouTube, it's fantastic. Anyway, we're going to get some questions from our lovely audience. Our first question tonight is from William. And where is William? Hi, William. Hi.
Hello.
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 You know you should be at the football, William. I'm going to be honest with you, mate.
Football fan, actually.
Oh, are you? All right.
Yeah. Shouldn't be at the football.
Well done. Well done, Francis. You're a psychic. Now, tell us, William, what's your question?
Do you think Donald Trump will go to jail?
Well, so you know this mugshot, Donald Trump, he's back on Twitter, or X as we're calling it now.
Well.
And he's posted this mugshot, we can see it right there. It's a very defiant sort of mugshot, isn't it? And it's gone viral. I think it might be the most viral tweet of all time. Francis, this is an odd one, because this was meant to humiliate Donald Trump, wasn't it? That was the whole point. Arresting him, getting a mugshot, you know, saying that this is someone who could never be president. You know what? They've been selling merch based on this mugshot. He's made over $7 million towards his election campaign. So it kind of backfired, didn't it?
But this is the thing with Trump. You can't do... You can't use normal political tactics against Trump.
No.
Because Trump is basically a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they said about, oh, you said all fat women are ugly, and he went, no, just Rosie O'Donnell.
Unbelievable.
And then he got a huge laugh, and everyone loved him. You can't do that.
It is true, Bruce. He's kind of impervious, because I'm glad he's back on Twitter, because I find his tweets really funny.
Right.
You know, I find him terrifying as a world leader. But you know, if he did an Edinburgh Fringe show, I'd be well up for that.
It would probably sell out.
I would think so.
Yes, it could be Behind the Hair.
That would be a great title.
Yes. But I actually think he would probably have more success with just the hairpiece.
Probably.
If he just narrated the hairpiece. Because he's not particularly pleasant to look at. There's kind of no safe place for you to rest your eyes with that. Seriously. So I'd be interested in watching the wig.
Do you think he will go to jail, Bruce?
I have no idea. And do you know what? I'm really not bothered. He can do what he likes. He's not in my life anymore. We fell out a couple of years ago. And
I
don't
know.
miss him.
He owes me a phone call as well, actually.
He owes
Francis,
me a fiver.
What do you think of this, though? You know, criminal charges. It is conceivable, I didn't realise this, that the president can run, or a guy can run for president from a jail cell.
Yeah,
he can.
I mean, America's so... Why is American politics so gangster-like? You know, this guy running it from jail, and you've got Joe Biden with his son who, you know, does all sorts of things.
Well, this is what happens, mate, when you kick the British out of your country.
Exactly.
They can't run anything.
They
can't be trusted. And obviously, by the British, I mean the English.
Yeah, well, let's...
Clearly. Look, could you imagine if Theresa May, not that she's done anything wrong, I think she'd be really good in jail. I think she'd be top dog.
You know what? I can totally see it.
So she'd be the one with the steam press. Yeah, she'd be saying, wait, I'm allergic, get out my face.
She's got more attitude than people realise. Do you remember those cat suits she used to wear?
Yeah. Do you know something? Although not a natural beauty, she has a willowy figure that clothes love.
There we go. On to our next question from Jared. I didn't see that one coming. Jared, where's Jared? Hi, Jared. Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks. My question is rioting now seen as a hobby for teenagers?
Well, I mean, you're relatively young. Is rioting something that you do?
Only during business hours.
Yeah, of course. But you're right, Jared. This is an odd one, isn't it? Because all these teenagers now... There's a couple of very young people down here. You might be able to explain this to us.
Children.
Children, effectively. But it's very, very fashionable now. And there's been this video that's gone out on TikTok, and they're talking about there's going to be 9 different shops attacked, social unrest.
What shops?
What happened to, just yo-yos or...
Well, so they're going to attack shops. Is this pretty much what we're talking about? With TikTok. But don't worry about it, because if you run a bookshop, you're going to be absolutely fine.
Yeah, they won't go near that.
They won't go near that because they can't read, obviously.
They're not good criminals either, Bruce. I mean, the point is, if you're planning some kind of chaos, as they describe it, don't put it on TikTok.
Yeah, why are you giving people a heads up? And did we not have all this when BlackBerries were a thing? Do you remember the BlackBerry Messenger?
Are those the phones that you tap with a pen?
Yes.
I'm so technological.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
the Crackberry.
And they were the Crackberry, right? Okay. And they were stealing trainers and all that kind of stuff. What shops are they targeting?
Well,
anywhere nice?
JD Sports.
Oh, no. Now, if it was Harvey Nichols,
you'd be up for it.
Oh, totally. I'd be out there going, "What's cheap? Come on." But then I'd still use my recognition app. I'd want the points. So.
It is a worry, though, isn't it, Bruce? I mean, the point is that with this new trend, it's gone beyond pranks. It's gone to now criminality. I mean, that's overstepping the line, surely.
Well, we were discussing that the other night on Headliners. Who's that guy? Is it Mizzy?
Mizzy, yes.
He's been stealing people's dogs and all that. Take a hammer to him. Seriously, get a hammer and just lamp him in the face.
Well, that would solve something, wouldn't it? Although
Yeah,
I don't endorse violence, I should emphasise.
No, in certain instances, though, particularly in this case, you want the Glaswegian solution.
Absolutely, yes.
OK,
yes.
well, we've got a question now from Ishmael. Do we have an Ishmael?
Yeah, Ishmael.
Hi, Ishmael.
Hello, evening. Should OnlyFans models be allowed to advertise on billboards?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So these big adverts for OnlyFans, apparently this particular model, actually, Eliza Rose Watson, it's been cleared. So she put up this advert, and it wasn't particularly provocative. I saw this advert. I don't know if we've got a picture, but it was the advertising stand. They got complaints, basically, and the Advertising Standards Agency said, it's absolutely fine, nothing wrong with these, because it's not overtly sexual. Did you see them, Francis?
Yes, I saw the, yeah.
I mean, she's wearing an uplift bra.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily sexual.
No, not at all. And actually, if you think about it, we're in the cost of living crisis. People are struggling to pay their rent, their bills. You need something to keep morale up. You know what I mean? And we all know it wasn't a man that complained, Andrew. Let's be honest about it. No man looked at that and went, I'm going to complain about that.
I mean, you know, with OnlyFans, irrespective of what you think about the morality of it, they're not breaking the law. You know, they're advertising a business. So...
I think they're actually being very savvy. If I was 20 years younger, believe me, I would have my cheeks up to the camera, winking away. But the thing is, there's no difference between that ad and Eva Herzegova back in 1993 advertising a Wonder Bra.
No.
So it's absolutely ridiculous.
That's
like,
true.
Seriously, if you don't want to look at the cleavage, don't look at it. Calm down. She's allowed to advertise what she wants, and if these are her wares, great.
Yeah, and you know, and like I say, it's not pornographic or anything like that. You say it's exactly the same.
It's just breasts.
It's just
the human
breasts.
body is nothing to be ashamed of, Andrew, as you know.
Well, no, I'm full of shame. But the thing is, I think a lot of people are worried, not so much because of the visual image of the advert, but because of the morality of OnlyFans in of itself.
But then I think people need to, like, stay in their own lane. If that's what she wants to do, that's absolutely fine. You know, she's above the age of consent. I don't think she's harming anyone.
No.
And she probably
Quite the opposite.
Yeah,
I mean,
she probably...
bringing a lot of
helping
joy.
people, yeah. But she probably doesn't have a mortgage.
No.
With a girl.
Yeah, OK. Well, we've got a question now from Carol. Hi, Carol.
Hello. Was Cheetah Gag really the funniest at the festival?
Yeah, so every year there's this joke of the Fringe competition at the Edinburgh Fringe. And, you know, progressively, year on, year out, the jokes are becoming worse, haven't they? I remember the first year, it was sort of OK. The joke was OK. Second year, it was like, that's all right. Ever since then, they've been really bad. Now, this joke, the winner was Lorna Rose Treen. I haven't seen Lorna's act. I'm sure she's a fantastic comic. I don't know what she does. And it's just one line. The trouble with this award is it takes a line out of context. The joke in of itself is, I started dating a zookeeper, but it turned out he was a cheater. OK, no response. But OK, it's a tough crowd. But the joke, as a lot of people have pointed out, the joke doesn't really work even on its own merits, because the misdirection doesn't quite work.
No.
Like, so it doesn't have the internal logic of a joke. And why did it win?
No, well, I don't... Look, part of it is it's not actually Dave's fault. So they got the way the...
Dave? Who's Dave?
Dave is the channel who are sponsoring this and who select the joke.
Right.
Right, OK. So they picked 10 jokes and they put it to the general public.
Ah, right.
And the general public picked that joke, which just shows the general public are stupid.
OK. So there is that. I think there's a thing about this, though, isn't there, Bruce, that, you know, the nature of the Edinburgh Fringe, when you have a list of best jokes, it's always going to be puns. It's always going to be one-liners, and they're by no means the funniest thing that happens on stage at the Edinburgh Fringe.
It was a bit like that guy, was it Olaf Falafel? And
yes.
He did some kind of joke about vegetables, and then people were upset because the vegetables were autistic or something like that. I can't remember. I drink a lot. But, yeah, no, I mean, I actually think that's all right, but then, what, you know, how can you, out of how many shows, say this is the funniest joke? Whoever you are. You know
it doesn't really work. I mean, there's whole routines that go on for sort of 15, 20 minutes, which are much, much funnier.
Oh, I saw them last night. Not naming the club's name, Backyard Comedy. I'm not going back. But,
OK, well, don't name any names.
No, I won't, because some of them are really good friends and they don't know. But, yeah, I just think that it's so subjective. How can you narrow it down to one? But good on her for winning.
No, good on her for winning, and lots of great people have won it. People like Zoe Lyons, and, you know, it's fine. But, you know, she won it about 4 years ago, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
What was the joke?
I can't remember.
No, neither can I.
So, you know... I just kind of feel sorry for the act in general, because everyone's sort of having a go, and it's one line out of context, but it was a bad joke, so...
Yeah, it was a bad joke, and comedians are objectively terrible people.
There is there is that.
Yes, there's a theme.
There's three of us right here,
yes.
Francis. OK, we've got one more question in this section from Jess. Jess, hiya.
Hello.
do you think striking is the best way to push for better pay for NHS doctors?
Yeah, it's all kicking off. Consultants in England, they returned to the picket line on Thursday for a 48-hour work stoppage, and during the strikes, they're doing a thing called Christmas Day cover, which means effectively only emergency care. Now, you weren't happy. I detected from your body language that you don't think this is...
Well, my thing is, of course, people need to be paid for what they do, and their work is very important.
Yes.
Allegedly.
What, saving lives?
Saving lives. I just say, you know, it's survival of the fittest. Let them walk into the road, who cares?
Some lives aren't worth it.
Well, no, don't get me started. I had a wine 2 weeks ago, and it's coming back. Anyway, my point would be, you know what you're getting into when you go into this.
Yeah.
And if you want to make money, be a vet. They will take your money. They will fleece you.
Yeah.
Seriously.
There's no shortage of dying animals.
Absolutely. No.
They're always dying, aren't they?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's kind of
Very
life
weak.
circle. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just like, strike, don't strike.
Well,
just stop it.
The thing about this is it is an essential service, right? And so, you know...
Is it?
Well, yes, I think health is
Really?
essential. So the thing... I'm always kind of instinctively on the side of strikers because I do think the right to withhold your labour is important, and particularly when you're being underpaid, as I believe members of staff at the NHS are, or am I just being a whinging lefty?
I'll tell you what about Bruce. I met him outside. Before he stepped into GB News, he was like, you know, Francis, gender's a social construct. 5 minutes in here, he was like, abolish the NHS.
Right.
That's how right-wing this place is.
Yeah, it's like a toxin. You sort of become...
I am high on nastiness.
You'll be goose-stepping in a minute. But
I don't even know what that means.
You will.
You
will.
Something I'm interested in.
Oh, well, I don't know what to do about that. You know, it's difficult. It's difficult, you know.
It is. Look, in all honesty, the problem is this. Over the pandemic, because we brought in lockdown, it meant that people couldn't have cancer treatment. They couldn't go and see cardiologists. It means that strokes, heart attacks weren't being looked at, they weren't being analysed. Our death rates are through the roof. For instance, in Scotland, a couple of months back, they had the highest death rate since 1952. This is only going to make the situation worse.
OK, well, a nice cheery note to end the first part on...
Comedy, everybody.
Yeah, but next on Free Speech Nation, a Labour government could be in place next year. Would that be a threat to free speech? We're going to be talking to the author of a report who says precisely that, and also campaigner Maya Forstater. See you in a few moments.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The Institute for Economic Affairs has issued a report which suggests a prospective Labour government could be a threat to gender-critical free speech. The report is titled Transgender Ideology, a New Threat to Liberal Values, and says, quote, there are concerning indications that a future Labour government would introduce new hate speech legislation with serious implications for freedom of speech. So I'm joined to discuss this by the report's author, Mark Glendening, and Maya Forstata, the co-founder of women's rights group sexmatters.org. Thanks both for coming.
Thank you.
Mark, I'm going to come to you first because you authored the report. Could you tell us what your findings are in a nutshell?
Well, in a nutshell, we see a movement, transgender ideology, which must be made distinct from transgenderism. We're not talking about the right of people to identify however they want verbally, but we're talking about a movement that wants to control through state regulation the way in which we use language and the way in which we think about sex and related issues. So, for example, 3 weeks ago, the Labour Party said that if they come to power, they will make it illegal for psychotherapists and parents to have a conversation with patients and children who are thinking of having a sex change operation. And it would be illegal to do anything but affirm that desire, because they say that is conversion therapy.
Right. So any child who's suffering from gender dysphoria or feelings of discomfort in their body, that will be outlawed to even talk about that, to even talk it through.
In private, unless you affirm that person's desire to go through with sex change surgery. And this is not just the Labour Party. I mean, there are Conservative members of Parliament like Theresa May and Alicia Kearns who also are calling for this legislation. Boris Johnson was going to introduce this piece of legislation, and then there was a pause.
Yes.
So, but this is something Labour are saying they're definitely going to do.
And Maya, so you obviously are from Sex Matters. Your group is particularly worried about this kind of legislation. Can you just briefly tell us what Sex Matters does?
Well, we're a human rights organisation. We're not a women's rights organisation, but women's rights are part of human rights. And we campaign for clarity on sex in law and policy in the UK.
And so this kind of legislation would be particularly worrying, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. The conversion therapy legislation that's proposed would be a chilling effect on therapists, on teachers, potentially on parents, youth workers, social workers, anyone who's dealing with a child who is confused about their sex and is worried, is thinking that they may be the opposite sex or they want to change gender. As Mark said, it would be a chilling effect on any professionals talking to that child and saying, what's the base of why you're feeling this way?
Exactly. I mean, as many people have pointed out, a lot of these kids who are suffering from these feelings often grow up to be gay. They're just gender non-conforming. Or often there's a high level of autism. There's other reasons to explore sometimes. But,
all the time, I think.
All the time, right, exactly. So, but you're, at Sex Matters, your concern isn't so much, correct me if I'm wrong, but that people can choose to call themselves whatever they like, but rather that we shouldn't change public policy to reify a kind of metaphysical belief that some individuals have.
Yes, I mean, people can wear what they like, call themselves what they like, have sex with anyone that would have them, as J.K. Rowling said. But all those things are personal choices. The question is, what are other people obliged to do?
Yes.
And particularly in work, in schools, as public service providers, all of those places where we're not just able to say, you do you. There are obligations, and the law's not bad, but it's got very confused. And so people have come to think that if someone says, I'm the opposite sex, then legally you have to treat them as the opposite sex. But of course you don't, and it's not safe to.
And of course it's considered hate speech sometimes if you don't go along with that belief. That's a problem, isn't it? We've seen in Scotland, we've seen very much in the new hate speech bill in Ireland, this idea that people are being compelled to utter beliefs that they don't hold. That's the real problem here, isn't it?
Well, yes. What it's demanding is that we suppress our own powers of rational cognition, our own capacity to reach judgment concerning what is real and not real, to this ideology. Now, this is a proto-fascistic illiberal development, and it's extremely dangerous. But you have to see, I think, transgender ideology not in isolation, but as part of a kind of broader political movement, a sort of axis of authoritarianism that includes extreme environmentalism, critical race theory, the campaign to decolonize the curriculum in universities. This is all part of an authoritarian movement that now exists in this country and throughout the Western world that's seeking to establish state control over language and thought.
Now, it's interesting because your report specifically talks about Labour, but this isn't really a left-right issue, is it? You know,
Not at all.
You mentioned Theresa May. The Conservative government has presided over some of the worst excesses of this. But Maya, do you think that Labour will be, well, worse, actually? Because, I mean, Keir Starmer has now at least discovered that a woman is an adult human female. That's a step in the right direction, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And end of July, Labour came out with, they said they want to modernise, simplify and reform the Gender Recognition Act while protecting single-sex spaces. They didn't say how they're going to do that, but that is also a step in the right direction.
It's mixed messaging, though, isn't it?
It is, and they're going to have to work out what any of that means.
Yeah, but isn't the obvious solution is the liberal approach, which is to say you can do whatever you want, identify how you want, etc. But we do have boundaries in society based on sex, and they are important.
Yes, I think that's basically the principle. But the devil's in the detail.
Yeah.
You know, how does that work in schools? How does that work in prisons and so on?
Are you worried about this notion of speech or beliefs being criminalised? I mean, you yourself have had a very protracted experience regarding this because you were effectively put through the ringer for your belief that sex is immutable.
Yes, I mean, I lost my job for it, and in the end my belief was protected, but people are still being reported to the police for tweets and being called in for interviews and having hate speech marked against them for saying that men are not women.
And why is that happening? Because, Mark, would you know, Maya's case was a landmark case in which it was confirmed that the belief that biological sex is real, that sex is immutable, that no human being has ever changed sex, which is a matter of fact, that is now a protected belief in law. That being the case, why are people still being investigated and arrested for stating otherwise?
Really good question. If you went into the Thames Valley policing area and you were to reproduce the English Oxford Dictionary's definition of a woman and were to put it in a leaflet you were to hand out, you would be arrested for a hate crime under Section 5 of the Public Order Act. The police in that area said they would arrest you for stating what is objectively true. The police have given themselves a power with no basis in law whatsoever to establish essentially a political register, a register of political criminals, which is entitled Non-Crime Hate Incident Database.
Yep.
So that if any one of us here tonight was to be reported by, say, Stonewall or Mermaids or some group like that for alleged hate speech, the police in the area in which we were reported, the police could then put us on this database with no right of appeal whatsoever.
Yes.
And this database has significance in terms of DBS checks and that sort of thing. Where does this power come from?
And
Parliament didn't give the police this power. The Association of Chief Constables gave themselves the power to pursue and harass people politically on this issue.
And where does this lead? I mean, I mentioned Ireland and I mentioned Scotland. This debate is going on and on. Do you think that you're on the winning side of this? Do you think things are going in the right direction?
I think there have been significant turning points. I mean, my case, obviously, but also, and what that's led to in terms of debate in the UK. And just before the summer, we had the parliamentary debate on this proposal to change the Equality Act to make clear that people are protected against sex discrimination and against gender reassignment discrimination. So, you know, if someone's trans, they should be able to get on a bus, get a taxi, go to a restaurant, do all the things that everyone else can do, but it doesn't give them the right to use spaces for the opposite sex. So those two things, sex discrimination and trans discrimination, should be clear and separate.
But activists are claiming that the Equality Act, when it said sex, always meant gender identity.
Well, this is what we're asking the government to clear up. I mean, you shouldn't need a degree in gender studies or a law degree to run a cafe. You know, everywhere that you have male and female signs on the door, everyone needs to know what that means. It should be simple.
And are you not frustrated, Maya, because you've worked tirelessly at this, but the very fact that you lost your job and you had to take it to a higher court just to state facts, this must be, the fact that they call it a protected belief must be frustrating in of itself.
It is, but it's so important that we fix this. You know, fundamentally, they're sterilising gay children. You know, so the fact that I lost my job and the fact that I was able to turn that into something good because people use my name to stop debate being closed down ultimately is a good thing. But we have to get this out of schools. We have to get clarity into schools that children are boys and they are girls, and that cannot change, and schools are there to keep them safe.
Well, Maya, Mark, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Still to come on Free Speech Nation, should the descendants of people who made money from the slave trade now be issuing apologies? We'll discuss it with two fantastic guests. First, let's get your latest weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. We're looking ahead to the new week. For most of us, it's going to stay changeable, some further spells of sunshine, but also some further rain at times. So as we end Sunday, we've got this weak weather front, which will gradually spread its way a little bit further eastwards. A ridge of high pressure trying to build in from Monday. It may well just settle things down briefly. But as we end Sunday, you can just see that weather front just gradually working its way eastwards. Rain very patchy on either side. We'll see plenty of clear spells, and then under the clear skies we may just see some patchy mist and fog. For most towns and cities, however, temperatures staying comfortably in double figures. So as we start Monday, a bank holiday for most of us, a bright start for a lot of us actually. It's still this area of cloud across central areas, and that will just spread its way a little bit further eastwards. And as we go into the afternoon, actually many parts seeing some cloud around, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce some showers, mainly focused across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. For most, it's a warmer feeling day, could see highs reaching around 21, 22 down towards the southeastern corner. Into Tuesday, a very similar day. A lot of dry weather around, but there will be some showers. This line of showers will just gradually spread its way a little bit further southwards as we go through the course of the day, and then later on, some blustery showers working into the far northwest of Scotland. Wednesday, similar still, but then on Thursday, we could just see a longer spell of rain arriving from the west throughout the day.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The family of former Prime Minister William Gladstone have been in the Caribbean this week, apologising for their ancestors' historical links to the slave trade. Guyana has been holding events to mark the 200th anniversary of a hugely significant slave uprising known as the Demerara Rebellion, which helped to end the practice. And Gladstone's descendants were there because his father John ran sugar plantations in the Caribbean and was compensated with a huge sum for the times by the government following the passing of the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833. To discuss this, I'm joined by the actor, filmmaker and writer Femi Nylander and the historian and columnist Tim Stanley. Femi, I want to start with you. Is this helpful for a descendant of William Gladstone to apologise for something that not even William Gladstone did, but his father did?
Well, I mean, William Gladstone did actually use his political power just before he became Prime Minister to basically assure that his father would get a payout of about 20 million in today's money when he's let his slaves go. So, and those kind of grants to slave owners or payments to slave owners for releasing their slaves weren't paid off by the British taxpayer until about 2015. So I do think it is a bit of a misnomer to say that William Gladstone had nothing to do with his father's actions. He basically secured his father a very big payoff. But nonetheless, I do think that when people say you shouldn't apologise for what your ancestors did, there is always something in that. There's something in saying, well, you didn't do it, your ancestors did it. But at the same time, if you are sitting on the wealth of your ancestors, if you're happy to inherit the money that they made off something, for example, if someone gave me money which I knew that they had made off kind of forced prostitution, or I knew that they had made off cocaine smuggling, etc., I'd be seen as handling dirty money. People would say, well, you're handling dirty money, you should give that money up to the police, you should hand yourself in. However, when someone passes on money to their descendants, which we know was based off human trafficking and rape and deprivation and theft, in this case, it's seen as all right. So I do think it's more important that they apologise for what they have done. And what they haven't done is enslave people. What they have done, or what they are doing, is holding on to wealth which was built off enslavement.
Tim Stanley, is that right? Has Femi got a point here that, you know, the Gladstone family, the descendants of William Gladstone, do enjoy a relatively affluent life off the back of some abhorrent practices? Is it not right that they should make some kind of declaration regarding this?
It's up to them, and I support their right to do with their money whatever it is they choose to do. And I can't disagree with 99% of what I've just heard, because it's historically, factually true. But the Gladstones didn't just profit from slavery, but when it was abolished, they actually received compensation for it having been abolished. So if anyone feels obliged to make a statement about slavery and their family's connection to it, it would be the Gladstones. There's a part of me, though, and bear with me here, this might seem facetious, but there's a part of me that wonders if there's an element of the humble brag about this. That this is an opportunity for some very well-meaning, liberal-minded, upper-middle-class people to signal to the world that they are related to the Gladstones. And I mean this quite seriously. If I think about my own family, I don't think I've got anything to apologise for on behalf of my family. Because if you went back to that period, you'd probably find that on my father's side, they were Irish tenant farmers. And on my mother's side, they were nonconformist preachers. And then if you think about the Prime Minister, well, his family weren't even British. They weren't even in this country. So it makes sense for someone to feel a personal connection through their family's genealogy to what happened in the past. But the problem is it's always expanding to the whole of society or the country and its relationship to what went on in the past. But for the vast, vast majority of citizens, we were not that important. We were not that wealthy. We didn't own anyone. So it's when the conversation begins to open up and it becomes this sense that we must all dig into our past and all confront what went on in our country and in our country's name. That's when I think it starts to move morally away from personal responsibility and into collective guilt. And I don't think that works.
Femi, can I ask you about that? I mean, isn't it the case that an acknowledgement that one's wealth has come from past discrimination, that's one thing. The word apology suggests personal responsibility, doesn't it? And in a sense, is that really appropriate with something like, as you said, when they haven't actually done it themselves?
Again, I think that there is definitely something in what has been said about the idea of signalling, because when I apologise for what my ancestor did, that doesn't mean I have to hand it back. Again, if I apologise that someone else ran a prostitution ring, for example, then I don't have to do it. I know I didn't do it. You know I didn't do it. It's a symbolic thing. If I apologise for the fact that I am holding on to funds that have been gained from a prostitution ring, then I'm apologising for something I'm doing. And I think if these families did what they actually had to do and started to say, okay, what we're apologising for is the fact that we live in a huge estate built off the back of the brutalisation and dehumanisation of Caribbean people, that would of course have to be accompanied with the act of giving that back to the descendants of the enslaved.
I understand. So, Tim, do you agree with Femi that rather than this apology, irrespective of the motivations behind it, even if it is a humble brag, that actually what the family should be doing now at this point is selling off their property and actually reparations, essentially?
The point is, it's up to them. I can understand why they might reach that conclusion, that their personal wealth is based upon that exploitation. I can see also why they might judge that there are parts of the world which are poorer and less well developed because of that exploitation, and they now wish personally to redistribute their funds. I can't disagree with that, in part because it comes down to a matter of personal choice and agency. My only word of caution, as I say, is I think that there's an emergent cultural bias towards the idea that we all have that responsibility, and that the state must in some way officiate and referee the handing back of national funds. And you and I do the moral maze. We've had this debate so many times about the problem of reparations. Where do you begin? Doesn't real moral responsibility lie with the present? What does someone in the present have relationship to something that happened 800 or 1,000 years ago? Where do we begin, and how do we arbitrarily draw the lines over what is one personally responsible for? Are Western regimes responsible for Marxist regimes in the developing world that in the 70s and 80s did so much damage to them and are probably at the very least as responsible for the lack of development in those parts of the world as slavery? We had nothing to do with that. Even the very fact me saying we, then again, I come back to what's it got to do with me? There are people in this country who came here themselves refugees, or themselves historically from sources of oppression. They could be Jews coming from Eastern Europe. Are they personally responsible through the tax system? Should they be responsible for things that Britain did or British people did 200 years ago? And should they fork out for it? So I just come back to, when it's a matter of personal choice, that's up to you. And I have some sympathy and indeed respect for those who wish to take account of what happened in the past and to now have some responsibility for it. It's when it widens out into what's Britain going to do that's when I start to feel we need to put the brakes on it.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating, and I wish we had more time because we could talk for hours about this. But Femi Nylander and Tim Stanley, thank you very much for joining me today. Next on Free Speech Nation, a bizarre tale from Iceland, where trans activists hounded the organisers of an LGB charity to the extent that the country's former Prime Minister had to step in. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So the charity Samturkin 22, an Icelandic sister organisation of LGB Alliance, is taking legal action after an extraordinary series of events which ended in the country's former Prime Minister stepping in so they were able to stage a conference. Activists have put pressure to prevent the event from going ahead. Well, the chair of the charity had a front row seat for this bizarre sequence of events. Elda Isidor joins me now. Elda, welcome to the show. Thank you. So tell me what happened. What was the event that you'd organised?
Well, we organised like a first conference for our organisation. Obviously, from the start, from when we founded the organisation, we were subject to the same attacks and slandering and libel that we were a transphobic hate group, etc., etc.
But you're a gay rights group.
Yeah, we're a gay rights group. Yeah, and well, because we express that we are against transitioning of children, that translates in those terms for the queer activists as transphobia.
Yes, well, I've spoken to Kate and Bev from LGB Alliance. They make the same point. They're continually having to fend off these libelous claims that they are far-right or fascist or all these ridiculous things. So
Yes.
you're getting the same thing in Iceland?
Absolutely the same, yes.
And merely for standing up for gay rights?
Yep. mainly for standing up for gay rights and actually, you know, standing up for gender non-conforming children, that they are left in peace. And actually our main core message is that puberty is a basic human right.
Right. So you had this event, it was cancelled. The former Prime Minister stepped in, is that right?
That's correct.
So what happened there?
Well, we had rented the National Museum auditorium, but we've kept the location completely quiet because we understand how trans activists operate. So as soon as we put out the location, the trans activists started bombarding the National Museum with emails and phone calls, etc., etc. And in a bank holiday weekend on a Sunday, the National Museum sends us a message and says, we made the double booking, it's cancelled, but there was no double booking. Our solicitor actually found out there was no double booking. And then we hired a second venue, and then the activists started bombarding those people as well, all the way up to the Icelandic Sporting Association. And that got cancelled too. And but the former Prime Minister of Iceland had actually said that he was going to attend the conference. So I sent out an SOS to the former Prime Minister, and he responded to it.
So you have some support there. But the current Prime Minister, my understanding, is that she is very much on board with gender identity ideology and is pushing for further hate speech laws, which is a similar problem we're facing potentially with our next government here.
Yes, she's trying to push the same sort of hate speech law that Tonje Jevjon was subject to in Norway. So it will be even more. So it will be even wider. You know, the definition.
What was that case? What was the
with Tonje Jevjon? Well, she's been on your show. She was subject to she could have faced 3 years in prison just for saying that lesbians can't have penises.
Yeah.
So
and people, it sounds like a joke, doesn't it? But
it's crazy.
These hate speech laws are coming in Scotland, in Ireland, Iceland now, and Canada certainly.
That's right. And Iceland introduced self-ID in 2019, and you have activists claiming on Twitter that it has not had any negative impact, etc., etc. But then you have Muslim women, Jewish women, women in general who do not want to go to public swimming pools in Reykjavik anymore. And Reykjavik City Council has actually published a objection handling manual for its staff, which I call gaslighting manual, where they're actually taught, or the staff is taught, how to deal with women who complain about men being in the showers. And in Iceland, it's mandatory to shower naked in communal showers before entering pools. Right? So you can imagine, you can have a scenario in a small town in Iceland where you have a 50-year-old, man showering with an 8-year-old girl.
Yes.
You know,
or indeed, as you say, a Muslim woman who has very religious beliefs that will simply not allow that to go ahead.
That's right.
So this isn't good for minorities either.
No. So you're discriminating against another minority to appease another.
Yes. So what can people do? I mean, you've got now a GoFundMe for Santokin 22.
Yes. I mean, we have. I mean, this is a precedent case now. I mean, a government institution that discriminates against gender-critical homosexuals who want just to have a meeting and talk about its issues. We need to take an action. So we have a GoFundMe now to.
Well, that address is on the screen at the moment. And it's very important, isn't it, that gay people in particular, whose rights were secured on the understanding that there are people who are attracted to members of their own sex.
Yes, and also we got our rights because we had free speech and freedom of assembly. That's through those, basic rights that gay people actually managed to obtain their rights. And
so this isn't just about gay rights and gay issues. This is about the broader principle of basic rights.
Absolutely. That's how we see it at the moment. Yes.
And have the activists been particularly hostile?
They have, absolutely. There were even few active. The funny thing is about this situation is the Pride Parade was happening at the same time as our event.
Right.
So instead of them actually being, preparing for their own events and celebrating their own events, they decided to use their time to sabotage ours.
Yes.
We had no actions planned against the Pride Parade or any of their events. It's not our style. That's not what we are about. We just wanted to have our event, and that was not allowed to go forward.
OK, well, I'm glad that you've come on to the show to raise these very important issues. So, Elder, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
So that's the end of our first hour, but please don't go away because there's a lot more to come between now and 9 o'clock, including more questions from our wonderful studio audience.
The temperature's rising. The Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. We're looking ahead to the new week. For most of us, it's going to stay changeable. Some further spells of sunshine, but also some further rain at times. So as we end Sunday, we've got this weak weather front, which will gradually spread its way a little bit further eastwards. A ridge of high pressure trying to build in from Monday. It may well just settle things down briefly. But as we end Sunday, you can just see that weather front just gradually working its way eastwards. Rain very patchy on either side. We'll see plenty of clear spells, and then under the clear skies we may just see some patchy mist and fog. For most towns and cities, however, temperatures staying comfortably in double figures. So as we start Monday, a bank holiday for most of us, a bright start for a lot of us actually. It's still this area of cloud across central areas, and that will just spread its way a little bit further eastwards. And as we go into the afternoon, actually many parts seeing some cloud around, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce some showers, mainly focused across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. For most, it's a warmer feeling day, could see highs reaching around 21, 22 down towards the southeastern corner. Into Tuesday, a very similar day. A lot of dry weather around, but there will be some showers. This line of showers will just gradually spread its way a little bit further southwards as we go through the course of the day, and then later on some blustery showers working into the far northwest of Scotland. Wednesday, similar still, but then on Thursday we could just see a longer spell of rain arriving from the west throughout the day.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week. We'll be discussing Jordan Peterson, Donald Trump, and myself and my panel will take more audience questions. But let's get a news update first from Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Nadine Dorries has accused Rishi Sunak of whipping up a public frenzy against her, and she says he doesn't have the X factor of a winning Prime Minister. In a blistering resignation letter, the former minister accused Mr Sunak of demeaning his office by criticising her. She says his government has abandoned conservatism and the 2019 election manifesto, which was published before Boris Johnson won an 80-seat majority. A by-election will now take place in the usually safe Tory seat of Mid-Bedfordshire. Labour's Shadow Secretary for Women and Equalities, Annalise Dodds, told GB News that Nadine Dorries makes some valid points.
Although I disagree with Nadine Dorries on many things, when she says that we currently have a zombie parliament, and when she asks what Rishi Sunak stands for and what he's achieved, I think many people will be saying they don't understand either. And I think this is incredibly damaging when, as we know, our country's in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We have a crisis in our NHS, crisis of crime on our streets, and yet we seem to have a zombie government that just can't get a grip.
High street chain Wilko could be saved from collapse after a last-minute rescue bid was launched. Wilko collapsed into administration earlier this month, putting 12,500 jobs at risk across its 400 stores. Well, private equity firm M2 Capital has submitted a last-minute bid worth £90 million. They've confirmed themselves as one of the several offers being considered by administrators. M2 Capital has also said it plans to guarantee all employees jobs for 2 years. Firefighters say the government has shown callous disregard for the safety of those on board the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Fire Brigades Union has sent a pre-action protocol letter to Home Secretary Suella Braverman outlining its concerns over safety aboard the vessel, which is currently docked at Dorset's Portland port. The union previously branded the barge a potential death trap. It's now demanding a response to its legal letter by Thursday. Russian investigators say genetics tests confirm Yevgeny Prigozhin died in a plane crash on Wednesday. The Wagner boss was on the passenger list of a private jet that crashed north of Moscow, months after a failed rebellion against Russia's military. Mikhail Yazganov was Prime Minister of Russia from 2000 until 2004. He told GB News this morning that Prigozhin had put unforgivable pressure on Putin over his management of the war in Ukraine. Residents of a road in London which avoids the ULEZ charge say they're being offered £100 a month by people hoping to avoid the emission fee. People living along Moor Lane and Chessington are being asked by motorists to use their driveways. While the road remains charge-free, turning off at any point would incur the £12.50 daily fee for non-compliant vehicles. The expansion of ULEZ aims to improve air quality, and from Tuesday it will be expanded into Greater London. You're with GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now it's over to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Let's get some more questions from our wonderful studio audience. Our first question is from Robert. Where is Robert? Hi, Robert.
Will Nadine Dorries now get her MBE as she has identified Rishi Sunak's key strengths as a Conservative leader?
She's really gone for it, hasn't she? So she's... Well, let's say... I think it's fair to say she flounced out, didn't she? She flounced out. She left a big attack. Blaze of glory, I think. She attacked Rishi Sunak, said he wasn't really Conservative.
Right, I mean, did anybody ever think that Rishi Sunak was a proper Conservative, number one? And number two, this is just a glorified 3-month tantrum because she didn't get her peerage. This is what it's all about.
You think that's what it is? Because, you know, she's also said that... She's pointed out that he's not elected as such, you know, that he hasn't had any votes, and she's doing all of this. But really, what... Isn't it about making a splash? She wants to be a celebrity. She wants to be a novelist, columnist, not really a politician. politician,
She
right?
hasn't even turned up. Has she even turned up to Parliament? Is she doing any work? Or is she just sitting there drawing her parliamentary salary and then playing to 6 people on Talk TV?
Is this going to have any effect on the Tory party? Like, I mean, Nadine Dorries, God love her, but her resigning isn't going to be a seismic moment. It's not like she's not Robin Cook, is she? It's not going to.
Seriously, the woman is delusional and deranged. Did we not forget that she forgot that she had a job and went into the jungle?
Yeah.
Like, do you really care about the people at all?
That's
no?
that's easy.
She didn't even know what Channel 4 was. She was trying to set it off or rebrand it or whatever.
Yeah, she lost the whip, didn't she, for doing that, for going into the jungle?
I don't even know that.
Right.
Very different to me, but that's but, my point with her is, do you remember when she was doing those? She was backing Boris, obviously.
Yeah.
And she was found in the main hall, staggering around, flinging her hair around. You're like, how much have you had to drink? It's only 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, you need to get a grip.
Yeah, so in that case, is it not better that Mad Nad, as they call her, has now left?
Oh, do they call her that?
They do call her that. I didn't just make that up. I'm not that mean.
Yeah.
That's an actual nickname.
Yeah, no, I think it is great. You know, my producer on my show is a Scouser, and as all Scousers, they think everything about Liverpool is brilliant, it's the best, blah, blah, blah. I go, what about Nadine Dorries? Never answers a question.
Interesting. That's a proper...
She's Liverpudlian.
Yeah, she's a Scouser.
You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it.
They never talk about that, do they?
Some very dodgy sundresses, that's all I have to say. Fabric is not her friend. Neither of the electorate.
So our next question is from Natalia, is it? Natalia, hello. Hello.
Good evening. Has Great Ormond Street Hospital lost the plot?
They have lost the plot.
Yeah.
No, I think they absolutely... I don't know if people have been following this, but Great Ormond Street Hospital, obviously a very well-known hospital for children, they've been bringing in this outside group to teach the staff about gender, or I should say genders. 150 apparently now.
Really?
Last I heard it was 76.
Yeah.
It's double.
It's like bacteria.
It's unbelievable.
You just leave it alone for a bit and it just multiplies.
Now, the thing about this, Francis, is I don't care what people's personal pseudo-religious beliefs are. I don't really care. But I do sort of care when, groups are coming into, hospitals and sort of... I mean, you may as well have, like, a hook-handed Islamist cleric come in and talk about homosexuality. Why...
At the same time, that'd be quite fun.
Do that, get some dodgy priest in, get all these people in, and why not? Or, because it's a hospital, just talk about medicine.
Yeah, there is a point. I just see these poor kids who are desperately ill just sitting there having, something like radiotherapy, and all of a sudden you get one of these nutbags from Mermaids pop up and lecture them. It's like, is my life not difficult enough?
Yeah.
I'm only 6. Please, just leave me alone.
There's a weirdness about this, isn't there, Bruce? 150 genders? Do you buy that?
Are the genders on strike?
Well, they should be, because that seems to be de rigueur at the moment.
Right, OK. Well, I'm not here to deny anyone's lived experience. If there's 150 genders, I'm for it. I have hats for every occasion.
Right. Oh, you're very nice about this, Bruce. I think it's nuts, personally.
But why? Does it bother you?
It does bother me. It bothers me that... well, I tell you why. Because I think, particularly in a medical establishment, you have to rely on biological fact. And that's actually quite important. If you're coming in and sort of trying to deny that... This group has actually talked about how the problems caused by puberty blockers is a myth. It's not a myth. All of the studies that are coming out are showing just how dangerous these things are. That's why it's important. If kids are going to be medicalised, sterilised, just for being gay, I have an issue with that, personally. But that's
quite bigoted, though.
Is that me being bigoted?
Is that what's happening, though?
It's exactly what's happening, yeah.
Well, no one sterilised me.
No.
I'm still really gay.
You're very lucky you weren't born around this time. It is the most dangerous time to grow up gay, I think. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move on now. Our next question is from Lorraine.
Kelly?
Not Lorraine Kelly, sorry. Hello.
Should you be jailed for sending racist WhatsApp messages?
Racist WhatsApp messages. Now, this is a fascinating case because this is a Met police officer sentenced to prison, 71 days in prison, for racist WhatsApp messages that were sent to an ex-partner, I believe. Now, I think, I've read the content of the messages. I think we can all agree this is a wrong un, this is a horrible human being. I don't approve in any way of what he wrote. I do, however, get very nervous about people going to jail for things they say or write. Am I wrong?
No, I actually quite agree with you. I think what the messages he sent were completely despicable. They were vile. They were racist. You start to worry when people get sent to jail for things they said unless it's incitement to violence or unless it's a threat.
Well, it sets a precedent that could be exploited by unscrupulous future governments.
Yeah.
They could say, and they already are saying, for instance, in Iceland, as we heard earlier, in Ireland, in Canada, they're saying, you know, well, actually, if you don't agree with our ideology, that's hate speech. That's the equivalent of racism. Yep. And if you set a precedent saying we can lock you up for it, then who knows where it's going to lead?
Absolutely, and we've seen time and time again people who make jokes. Now, some of these jokes are not particularly funny, and they can be seen to be in poor taste. And people have had criminal records as a result.
Yes. OK,
so it is very worrying.
Speaking of poor taste, Bruce.
Hi.
So what do you think about these messages? I mean, obviously they're horrible, right?
It is abhorrent. You know, I have no truck with anyone who is actively racist. I just think it's appalling. But then what about Boris and his WhatsApp messages?
Oh,
yes. I just mean that if this guy was done that for racism, was Boris not meant to be handing over messages that could have incriminated him? So why isn't that happening?
I think the difference here is that these were messages that were sent to the complainant. So I think that person, she's saying this is a form of harassment, in other words, I suppose.
Well, it is.
Yeah. But what I don't understand about that is, you know, I get called all sorts of things online, actually quite explicitly homophobic things online.
I apologise for that.
Yeah, it's all from him.
Do you feel you bring this on yourself?
I do slightly bring it on myself.
Not for everyone.
No,
yeah, and I've made that point.
Yeah. No, it's fine. You know, look, the threats and all the rest of it, because I am annoying, I get it. No, but the thing about it is that I just block them and get on with my life. And what I don't understand is why didn't she just... You can block phone numbers and then move on.
I totally get everything you're saying. Yeah. I mean, I'm...
Jail time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm embroiled in online abuse as the perpetrator.
Yes.
So I don't want that right taken away from me.
No.
Because some people need to be told.
That's fair enough.
My name's Nadine.
Your obsession with Nadine is very disturbing. Anyway, we've got a question now from Francesca. Where's Francesca? Hi.
My question is, was Picasso a racist?
Was Picasso a racist? I wouldn't know about that. He's been accused of sexism, I think.
Was he not accused of being a misogynist?
Yes, he was. Yes. But there has been a breaking news story this week. It's his grandson, I believe, has come out and defended him.
Yeah.
And sort of said, OK, so he was a womaniser. He was a philanderer. He had lots of different women. He mistreated a lot of women. I think he said some pretty unpleasant things about women. But
I'm half Latin American. He's Spanish. That's our culture, mate.
So
that's what we do.
So this is a cultural difference.
Yeah, of course it is.
So I have to respect your right.
Yes, absolutely.
To be obnoxious.
Yes. Number one, you have to respect my right. Number two, I actually have a Latin American girlfriend. And she's very angry. So sometimes, you know, they're feisty is what I'm saying.
Well, but this weird thing about Picasso, right? Loads of people have... Hannah Gadsby in her special did that whole thing about how Picasso was evil and a monster and all the rest of it. But is it not a bit patronising to the women? Because the grandson is saying, look, all of these women knew what an idiot he was, and they got into it anyway. So to say to them that they are victims somehow is a kind of... It's almost anti-feminist.
I never thought about it that way. But the thing is, as well, the same was said about Robert Burns, Scotland's national bard.
It was.
He was a philanderer and a womaniser and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you have to remember that some people... OK, people do take advantage of people and all this kind of stuff. But I think some women would have gone with Picasso so they could mention it at a dinner party.
Oh, absolutely. What an anecdote. Yeah. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
Hemel Hempstead.
Yeah.
Oh, clearly.
Yeah.
You would love everything painted on one side.
Oh, of course I would. Absolutely.
But, yeah, no, I think when you've got people coming in to defend the rights of other people, you're just like, oh, you have to be quiet.
That's interesting about Burns as well. Someone just drops it. It's all kicking off at the back, basically.
Right, okay.
It's interesting about Robbie Burns because, of course, yes, he wrote some letters which some feminists have said these are really problematic because he's really misogynistic, but he wrote really good poetry. So can't we keep the poetry and not worry about the rest of it?
Well, absolutely. And was it not a long time ago?
It was quite a long time ago.
People always wanting to retrospectively get people in jail or annoy them or all that kind of stuff. Again, take a hammer to them. I'm so done.
Yeah.
So done. OK, right. Well, we're going to move on now. I think we've got another question in this section. This is actually an email question from Charlotte. So thanks for emailing in. Although she should make the effort and turn up.
Well, absolutely.
You know, there's wine and cheese and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so her question is, do Home Office officials really want to change gender every day? Right. Now, I read about this in The Telegraph. This is non-binary staff. They get male and female security passes because some of them want to change gender day by day. Which gets quite confusing.
Yes.
Should they be allowed to do that?
No.
Right? Is that because it's a security issue, or you're just being a bigot?
Yeah, I'm just being a bigot. That's why I'm here every day, mate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And even when I'm not here, I'm just hanging out by the toilets. But
So am I.
However, no, of course it's a security issue.
Well, it's a security issue.
Yeah.
But it's also just a bit bonkers, isn't it? Like...
It's just a bit nuts. Look, you can indulge somebody a little bit, but it comes a point where you go, no, we have to live within the realms of reality.
Yeah.
You can't have two separate IDs.
Yeah.
What, you're going to have two separate passports?
It's a bit like Schmeagol and Gollum, isn't it, in Lord of the Rings? You know, like one day you can be like this and one day you can be like something else.
I mean, over and above what everyone feels about it, I just kind of think about Greta Thunberg and the fact that, you know, they're plastic, so they're bad for the environment.
Yeah.
They haven't thought of that.
No.
Yeah, and they're meant to be woke.
Yes, exactly.
But they're actually destroying the planet.
They are destroying the planet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's that. But who doesn't have it? Listen, I've just done the Edinburgh Fringe, where if you don't have a lanyard, you're not really a real person.
Yeah, that's right.
I think a lot of people get overexcited. In Edinburgh, they have a big coffee, a clipboard and a lanyard. You do not want
I love those student reviewers who get a press lanyard.
Oh, the 3-year-olds.
Yeah, they're 3-year-olds.
Just cats.
Exactly. And people just fawn all over them because they're desperate for reviews, and they love it, don't they?
Yes.
They lap it up.
They lap up the lanyard.
They do.
Yeah,
They
you heard it here first.
Yeah.
They're lanyard lappers.
But they're terrible critics, and they've got nothing to say because they don't know anything, because they're embryos.
Unless they give you a good review, in which case...
I always said you plaster it all over your poster.
Yeah, of course.
But I'll take anything from anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, no.
Let's not go down that road. OK, still to come on Free Speech Nation. Psychologist Jordan Peterson has been ordered to take social media training or potentially lose his licence. Ella Whelan is going to be here to discuss it.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. An Ontario court has upheld a ruling ordering psychologist and author Dr. Jordan Peterson to undergo social media training due to controversial posts he has shared over the last few years. Peterson was forced to comply with the order after the court judges dismissed his legal complaint against the College of Psychologists of Ontario. Earlier this year, the academic body claimed that some of his social media posts could be viewed as professional misconduct and asked that he completed the course. So earlier today, Jordan Peterson reacted to the court's decision on his YouTube channel. Let's take a look.
Been awaiting a court decision in Canada with regards to the Ontario College of Psychologists' decision to require me to be re-educated in relationship to my social media use or to lose my license. The court ruled today in favor of the college. They claimed that I have the right to free speech in Canada, but subject to, apparently, whatever limitations the college wants to place on me, and by implication, every other professional in Canada, and by implication...
So with us to discuss the court decision and its wider impact is journalist and author Ella Whelan. Ella, this is a disturbing case, isn't it? I mean, it's not as though the tweets that he's posted are sort of fascist or racist or all that kind of stuff. The tweets that he has posted are, I suppose, gender critical in one sense. They are quite abrupt sometimes. They are offensive to some people, but that's it. They're personal opinions.
Yeah, it is telling that it's all to do with some of the stuff he said about Elliot Page, a lot of the stuff that he said around the question of trans ideology and his particular view, which, as it happens, a lot of people share, of being gender critical and having some serious questions about, you know, medication relating to children and things that most of us I think are quite normal. And he's got them banged to rights. I mean, this ruling really does say that you have free speech, but with the emphasis on the but.
Well, they've even said it in the statement.
Yeah, and that it's quite actually in a weird way, and it's good that Jordan Peterson is going to be, he's threatened to be very public about this and reveal it all. It's good that these kind of cases come to light because a lot of this is often very sneaky, very underhanded, and nobody ever really wants to come out and say we're for censorship. We're the ones that think censoring should happen. It's always a sort of a more subtle approach, and to have it written there and to have cases like this reveal the extent of censorship. And some people have joked on Twitter, who is going to be this poor social media manager who's going to have to sit down with Jordan Peterson, who's going to broadcast it to millions of people and tell him how to use Twitter.
It's quite. I mean, the idea of re-education. I mean, it's so bizarre. But you're right. He is in a position to do this. He actually said in his YouTube statement about this that he hasn't been able to practice since 2017 anyway because of activists and the rest of it. So he is in a position. He can do this. He can take a stand and he can push back because there must be other people that this is affecting who would just lose their jobs if they tried to complain. Well,
I mean, Ontario in particular is a bit of a basket case. I mean, someone that who's been on the show before and who's very big in terms of talking about free speech, Joanna Williams, back in May this year, went to give a lecture on, funnily enough, on people with gender-critical views being silenced, or women talking about sex and gender being silenced at a public library in Ontario, which was cancelled, which is kind of proving her point.
Did they not realise they're proving her point? It's just a demonstration of the reason why the speech exists.
I don't think they care. I think it was just... There's a kind of trend, particularly Canada's very bad for it, there's a trend with a sort of a practised cowardice around these issues, which is that rather than take on the kind of views that maybe if you disagree with Jordan Peterson on his views around self-ID or medication around trans ideology or things like that, instead of taking them on, the emphasis and the desire is always to just hit the ban button, hit the silence button. And that's obviously very bad for public debate. But, as much as Jordan Peterson has the cash, the resources, the status to be able to stand up for himself, there are lots of people who don't have that. Obviously, we're not quite as bad as Canada yet, but in the UK, we still have some very serious issues. I mean, the interesting thing that came out with this particular case was the idea that social media training would be the solution. I think it tells you a lot about the approach to the question of free speech or the question of public debate, which is, it's all about sort of how you package things up. And if you learn to use the right kind of language on social media, then you'll be all right. And it's not really dealing with the ideological clash that's really going on.
I suppose some of Jordan Peterson's detractors would make the argument that, well, in all sorts of jobs, we can't just tweet however we like. You know, when I was a school teacher, there are certain things, there are certain lines that I wouldn't have been able to post on social media. It would never have occurred to me to do so. Is there an argument to be said for that?
Well, it's interesting because the argument goes that Jordan Peterson is acting like a sort of public psychologist, that actually, despite the fact that he hasn't got patients or, you know, is taking on clients or anything on an individual basis, that his positioning of himself as a sort of the dad of psychology.
Well, a public intellectual,
yes.
You know, who's going to be tweeting.
The argument goes that means that he is representing the profession and therefore is subject to the kind of
It's very tenuous, I think.
I do think it's very tenuous, and, you know, you only have to... All these things, there's always a balancing act going on here, which is that, OK, professionalism in any kind of particular field, particularly those related to medical or mental health, are serious things. I don't want to poo-poo that consideration. But on balance, the idea that you would say that individuals have no right to voice their political and, you know, public opinions on platforms like Twitter, which have become... you know, quite vital public spaces for discourse and debate, that you would have to be silenced, you know, or trained to say the right thing. Well, I think that's the worst evil here. That's the more dangerous thing, that sort of the promotion of self-censorship.
And isn't it really that what they're punishing him for is not having the opinions that they agree with? I mean, one of the complaints has been that one of the tweets was a criticism of Justin Trudeau. Yeah. And that apparently, according to this body...
What a sin. What a sin. I mean, particularly in Canada. But you can't criticise Trudeau.
Let's talk about that. I mean, Canada has particular problems here. I mean, we saw this with the truckers' protest, where you had leading mainstream politicians effectively smearing these people as fascists and saying ridiculous things like the honk-honk, when they were honking the horns, that meant HH, and that was a code for Heil Hitler. Yeah. That was not coming from some idiot blogger. That was a mainstream politician in Canada. What's going on there?
Yeah, and, you know, as much as Trudeau and the people who support this kind of action in Canada like to see themselves as ultra-liberal, very open, rainbow-flagged, all the rest of it. Actually, his government is extremely authoritarian. If you look at what happened in relation to the truckers, not just the way they were treated, but also the fact that they had their private finances frozen and you know, basically sequestered because they were putting forward a political opinion that you know, some people didn't agree with. Yes. And so there's always this kind of cloak and dagger action, which is that the appearances of being very liberal with a capital L, but in actual fact, the test of someone's true belief in freedom, in liberty, not liberalism, but liberty, is whether or not you have a sense of tolerance, whether or not you're able to defend other people's right to say things. I mean, one of the things that, you know, Jordan Peterson has said on Twitter that got him into trouble in relation to this was he talked about a plus-size model as not being beautiful and calling her fat and things like that. And, you know, I don't think that's a particularly great thing to do. I, you know, would probably be quite pissed off about that if I was that model. Indeed, as a woman, it quite annoyed me. But the idea that you would approach these kind of things, approach these kind of debates or approach people who have different views to you, or even views that you find appalling, by throwing your toys out of the pram and saying that they have to go on re-education courses, I think it says more about you and your ability to engage in adult debate than it does about them.
Well, even that tweet, you see, because out of context, it could sound like just teenage mudslinging, that kind of thing, just calling people fat on the internet. Actually, he was making a broader point, wasn't he, about aesthetics and about the way in which the idea that with modern art and modern aesthetics, that anything goes, it's about subjective view. And there is an argument, there is a debate to be had about this.
Yeah, there is a debate to be had about it. It's probably not one I'd want to waste my time on. But, you know, this is the thing. I think Twitter, it's interesting that this has all come about around his social media use, because Twitter has become an incredibly influential place, despite the fact that most people do treat it, a lot of the time, like a teenage mudslinging fact. That means that's politicians as well as public figures. I mean, one of the fascinating things is that one of the academics who was key in being a kind of critic of Jordan Peterson has, you know, as these things always happen, someone's dug up one of her not-so-old tweets calling someone a BITC agent and saying, you know, horrible stuff about somebody.
Interesting.
And, you know, this is somebody who claimed that Peterson was bringing the profession into disrepute by using harmful words.
Yes.
So, you know, everyone's always a hypocrite in these things.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's far safer to just stick to the free speech line
Yes.
and say, I'll defend your right to say whatever you like, as you know, as long as you also defend my right.
And even if it's strident, if he's saying that, you know, we shouldn't be saying that plus-size people are beautiful because that, in a sense, allows bad health, poor health, or suggests that this is something that people should aspire to. That's a reasonable point of view, and people can be free to get offended. But to silence him, to say he needs to be retrained, I mean, it all sounds very kind of Stalinist.
It does sound Stalinist, and part of the problem, I think, for someone like me, we've got I help run the Battle of Ideas Festival, which is taking place at the end of October, and you can still get your tickets. And one of the key themes that we're looking at is how these kind of culture wars that are really framed around questions of free speech, whether they're about aesthetics and being fat or thin, or whether they're about gender ideology, racism, lots of the things we've been talking about on the show this evening, about how a lot of it really all boils down to a question of freedom of speech. And a lot of that discussion about free speech is happening on social media, whether or not, you think big tech companies should be in control of it, whether or not you think government should be in control of it, whether or not you think social media experts, as Jordan Peterson says, whoever they are, I mean, they're going to get some 20-year-old out of university, they're probably the most expert at social media.
Yeah, well, certainly at using it, but not sort of deciding the parameters of acceptable thought.
Exactly, and, it all really boils down to who do you trust to police your own speech? And the answer should always be yourself.
Yes.
And the answer should always be that you are accountable to yourself and to the public who you interact with, and that the solution to opposing views, to difficult views, to sometimes disgusting views, like the police officer you were just talking about, is not to pretend like they don't exist by silencing them, but to investigate them, maybe to poo-poo them if that's what's required, but to, treat people and other views with the kind of seriousness that they deserve, because the outcome, I think, of any, and this is sort of something that we're going to look at the battle, is the outcome of progress, of any kind of move in society towards a progressive future, has to be based on a fundamental baseline of freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and taking liberty seriously.
Well, Ella, I do look forward to the Battle of Ideas every year. It's the last weekend of October, is that right?
Yes, 28th and 29th.
A weekend of debates, hundreds of speakers from around the world. It's really worth people coming along to that.
There.
And I'll be there as well.
Exciting.
So, Ella Whelan, thank you very much for joining me. Next on Free Speech Nation, as we discussed earlier in the show, it has been a lively week for Donald Trump. When is it not? A criminal defence lawyer will be here to tell us just how much trouble Trump is in. But first, let's get your latest weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. We're looking ahead to the new week. For most of us, it's going to stay changeable. Some further spells of sunshine, but also some further rain at times. So as we end Sunday, we've got this weak weather front, which will gradually spread its way a little bit further eastwards. A ridge of high pressure trying to build in for Monday. It may well just settle things down briefly. But as we end Sunday, you can just see that weather front just gradually working its way eastwards. Rain very patchy on either side. We'll see plenty of clear spells, and then under the clear skies we may just see some patchy mist and fog. For most towns and cities, however, temperatures staying comfortably in double figures. So as we start Monday, a bank holiday for most of us, a bright start for a lot of us actually. It's still this area of cloud across central areas, and that will just spread its way a little bit further eastwards. And as we go into the afternoon, actually many parts seeing some cloud around, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce some showers, mainly focused across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. For most, it's a warmer feeling day, could see highs reaching around 21, 22 down towards the southeastern corner. Into Tuesday, a very similar day. A lot of dry weather around, but there will be some showers. This line of showers will just gradually spread its way a little bit further southwards as we go through the course of the day, and then later on some blustery showers working into the far northwest of Scotland. Wednesday, similar still, but then on Thursday we could just see a longer spell of rain arriving from the west throughout the day.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The remarkable legal circus surrounding Donald Trump stopped off in Georgia this week as the former president surrendered at Fulton County Jail on charges relating to his attempt to overturn the state's 2020 election results. He was only inside the jail for around 20 minutes, becoming the first president in history to have his mugshot taken by police. Now, Trump is the clear frontrunner to be Republican candidate in next year's presidential election, but he's now been arrested 4 times in 5 months, twice on charges relating to the 2020 election, once due to his apparent attempt to keep porn star Stormy Daniels quiet about their alleged affair, and once over his handling of classified material after losing that election to Joe Biden. So there's a lot to unpack here, but here to help, it's the criminal defence lawyer, Joseph Cotry-Monson. Joseph, thanks for joining me. So you've seen the mugshot. It went absolutely viral, and it's really helped his campaign. It's helped him to raise millions of dollars. Do you think that actually this is backfiring?
It's very interesting, isn't it? He has to double down on everything.
Yeah.
He has to make the best of it, because it's probably not a situation that he would have picked. Who would have thought we'd be living in these times? Famous mugshots in history: Johnny Cash, Kurt Cobain, Donald J. Trump.
Yes.
I think that this is interesting because the way in which the political narrative, intersects with the legal one.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people have made the case that what is happening here is that the legal system is being weaponised against a political opponent. Do you think there's any merit in that?
I think there absolutely is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the evidence is not the evidence. There's a strange system in the US, isn't there, where in order to become a senior attorney, a district attorney, a state's attorney, you have to do it by election in most states.
Yes.
That's a strange situation because it means that even as a judge, you have to have a political affiliation. And that creates this possibility of, as you say, weaponisation. Having said that, the evidence is the evidence.
But irrespective of the evidence, I suppose you could say that even if, let's say, the legal system wasn't being weaponised here, it is certainly being perceived that way. And that perception is what's going to help Trump, isn't it?
I think that's right. But, of course, if he's convicted, then... I can't believe I'm saying it. If he's convicted, none of that will mean anything.
So talk me through the legal ramifications here. Can we have a candidate for the presidency who's in jail?
Yes, we can. The way in which the American legal system works is this. You can be facing charges, for example, and if the public say that you're going to be their commander-in-chief, that is the final say. That is the final judicial and democratic vote, which kind of casts the fate of the nation.
And then, if he were to win the election, could he pardon himself?
That's a difficult question because he faces 2 federal indictments and 2 state ones. The state ones are kind of duplicated because we'll see in the Fulton County local one in respect of the alleged overturning of the Georgia results. Well, that's a state one that's in court tomorrow.
Yes.
But in respect of that one, it's not so easy for him to pardon himself because the governor in Georgia, it's a peculiarity. He doesn't have the right to pardon somebody. The president can't pardon himself because it's a state thing. There's a state committee. My understanding is that they're particularly miserly in that state committee as to who they pardon.
But we are talking about long potential jail sentences here, aren't we?
Rico, his co-defendant. His co-defendant is Rudolph Giuliani, who pioneered the use of racketeering, the RICO charges.
Yes.
He pioneered the use of RICO in the 1980s, which basically outlaws corrupt practices across organisations, kind of like the law on conspiracy here.
Yes.
The challenging thing for him in that regard is that these are offences that can carry 20 years easily. And what can you imagine as a worse, more aggravating version of a sentencing exercise than somebody who is convicted of knowingly and willfully attempting to overturn the results of a national election?
So there's something very dramatic about the idea of him running an election campaign from a prison cell, like some sort of gangster.
Yeah.
You know, like.
And this is your scenario. I'm not envisaging it.
No, but you know, it could potentially happen. But then, surely, if he's elected, what, he's going to be president from prison?
And I don't know enough about the Republican Party rules to know whether that, even having received the nomination, that couldn't be withdrawn from him.
Right.
I'm not an American political scientist. I can't imagine a scenario where a sitting president had already been somebody who...
Well, it's also inconceivable. It's completely like a pantomime.
It is.
I mean, don't the American people want some sort of normality again when it comes to politics?
Well, if they wanted normality, they voted Donald J. Trump in 2016. I think you know that I represented the chief of operations of Cambridge Analytica in connection with the whole Facebook data thing here. And, you know, the thing that struck me in particular was in that milieu, you have a combination in the Trump camp of actually hard-working, competent individuals and occasionally these very intense, very confident, slight screw-loose characters for whom anything is possible. As Murray Walker once said, anything can happen in motor racing, and it often does.
So, in terms of the charges and in terms of the evidence, I don't know if you want to give your opinion, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you think it is likely that he's going to be found guilty?
I'm not on the jury, and I can say this. There's certain evidence which is challenging, specifically in relation to the Mar-a-Lago classified documents charge, which I think is probably the second least threatening to him.
Yes.
Well, those audio transcriptions, if they really reflect what was said and the audio matches that, in which he's pointing to classified documents and saying, look, I could have declassified this, but I didn't, I think that's at least a criminal conviction. But is that anyway near as serious as what's alleged in this case? Absolutely not. And I think alleging RICO is one thing, proving it is another. The reason we have 18 co-defendants is the prosecutor, Forney Willis in that case, will be hoping that people break ranks and plead. If that happens, their guilty pleas are evidence of the conspiracy. They're also evidence that could be admissible against Donald J. Trump, that he knew about it.
Right.
We will expect witnesses to turn. Some may give evidence for the state. If that happens, things could become a little bit hot and spicy.
But so much of Donald Trump's appeal, I mean, it started with the whole drain the swamp idea, this idea that there's a kind of elite mainstream that is working against the interests of the people, that will use all kinds of, underhand tactics.
Andrew, I think you're right. I think it feeds into his narrative. Like I said, he probably wouldn't have chosen this, but his only play is to make the best of it. He says, they're not indicting me, they're indicting all of you.
Right.
I'm the one who stands in the way. He's putting himself in the position of martyr before the arrows even really begin to hit.
It's very clever, actually. And, that mugshot is one of the most viral tweets of all time. Millions and millions and millions of people have seen this. He's used something that was meant to humiliate him to his advantage. His interview with Tucker Carlson the other day viewed over 200 million times, far more than any mainstream media outlet.
That's right, although the views don't necessarily mean support. I'm very, very interested in what's happened in a kind of ghoulish and voyeuristic way. I don't really care what happens to Donald Trump either way. But I have to say, I can't believe we're living with these times. And like many people, I can't tear myself away from the screen.
No, it's a drama and it is compelling. But Joseph Kochi-Monson, thank you so much for joining me. So, next on Free Speech Nation, it'll be time for social sensations. So we'll be discussing the sexism scandal which is rocking the football world and ask why parents have started cracking eggs on their babies' heads. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. It's time for Social Sensations. This is the part of the show we devote to the videos that have been dominating social media this week. And first up is the video which made headlines across the globe, sparked a huge sexism row. This is President of Spanish Football Federation, who kissed a female football player on the lips after she helped Spain to win the World Cup final. Let's have a look.
In the last few years. Great to see it. What a moment for Olga Kalmana, about to lift the women's national team. She'll join Andres Iniesta, who scored in that final.
So, very hands-on, and of course it's caused a huge debate this week. This has been dominating everything. Francis, what do you make of that? That's not professional, is it?
No, that's not professional, mate, and it's not what we would do at GB News. You know, just before you're about to go on, someone puts a smacker on you.
No.
You know, particularly after I do a belting performance. I must say I'm quite disappointed.
It sounds like you are disappointed, to be honest.
It isn't. It is quite unprofessional, though.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought. Is it just... I mean, a lot of people are saying that he just got caught up in the moment. He was so excited about Spain winning the World Cup that he wasn't really thinking. Do you think that's a reasonable defence?
I don't think it needs defending, personally. I don't understand what the fuss is about. I do that with Leo Kearse all the time, and he really enjoys it.
He says he enjoys it. He's being polite there.
His breath is foul, by the way, so I'm going to stop. No, I'm just like, OK, he did get caught up in the moment. Is it really that bad? Well, I don't know. Believe it or not, I'm not a woman, so I can't comment.
OK. Any more comments on that, Francis?
Well, I am a woman, and
I've got to say a stunning one.
Exactly. Yeah, I model myself on Sue Perkins.
Oh, that's a low bar. Honey, we can do better. You're at least an Nadine.
Oh, my goodness. Right, moving on. Next up is the latest trend on TikTok, which is always worrying news. This is one where parents crack eggs on their children's heads. So have a look at this.
Go, crack it. Woo!
Is this some weird sort of Masonic ritual, or is it like a genuine culinary trick? Does it benefit the eggs? I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know either. I just kind of think, is that not child abuse?
Well, I think it's only an egg. I mean, if it was a bowling ball,
so
probably.
Like, you know, your kids come in, you're not in the mood for the...
Hit them with an egg.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I don't know.
It's yeah, maybe. What do you think about this one?
Oh, look, I think the kids of nowadays need to toughen up. You know? She started crying. Look, when you know what happened to me when I was growing up? My parents were so tight. My mum used to take me to a barber and they used to pay £3 for a haircut. Right. And then when I went into school, even the teacher said to me, "Where did you get your haircut?" Tesco's. Right.
Wow, so you were bullied by the teacher?
So bullied by the teacher. Look, I'm in agreement with this. They need to toughen up.
Well, you know, this has been viewed more than 670 million times.
Yeah, so we need to start doing that.
People love this kind of
smashing eggs on each other.
No, let's get a kid, smash an egg on them, we'll become famous.
OK, well, that's going to be a new segment in the show as of next week, so just bring a child along, we'll do that. OK, next up, a good lesson for life. When you go and visit someone, do not make rude remarks about them if they have a camera recording it all. Let's have a look.
Here, Dad. All I'm going to talk about is this ex and his financial problem. Oh, I mean, I was so excited to see Tommy. He's not pathetic. He is so nice. He is such a good guy. I was so excited to see him today.
Thoughts, Francis?
I don't understand a word that was being said.
No, OK, no.
Genuinely, what was going on there?
Well, I think the child had inadvertently said something offensive and then tried to act his way out of it. I think that's what was going on there.
What is this set-up nonsense?
It is set up, isn't it?
Of course it's set up.
Yeah.
It's like those watch robberies on Instagram as well. That's all
Because they get clicks. I mean, this is the point. That's the reason for it.
Well, that's really sad.
Okay, well, maybe we should stage some things here and see if we can get a viral video.
Why is that child worried about financial problems? You're a child. Grow up. Have an egg smashed on your head. Be quiet.
That's the solution for everything. OK, well, look, this is the part of the show where we're going to talk about your unfiltered dilemmas.
Oh, good.
And Bruce loves this bit.
Yes.
People send in their problems, and Bruce is all about solving problems. Our first dilemma came in from Anna. Anna says, a group of my friends and I are going to a pub quiz this weekend. One of the friends in our group is super smart and really arrogant when it comes to pub quizzes. Is it bad if I don't invite him? He'll hog the quiz and ruin the fun, but we would probably win. Isn't victory more important than pride?
Oh, Anna, grow up. I mean, seriously, you should be lucky that you have someone that can win you the pub quiz, and at least that way when you win, you'll be able to lord it over everyone in the pub and stop being a dweeb, Anna.
What do you think, Francis?
Yeah, I think she should get over herself.
Yeah.
Look, victory is everything. It's about crushing your enemies and celebrating their ignominious defeat.
And on that uplifting note, thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Jordan Peterson got a slap on the wrist for his unfashionable opinions. Nadine Dorris had a strop, and Donald Trump went viral, as usual. Thank you so much to my panel, Bruce Devlin and Francis Foster, and to all of my guests this evening. If you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our audience, you can do that. Just go to the address on the screen, www.sroaudiences.com. Do come along. Stay tuned for Mark Dolan tonight, hosted by Leo Kirst tonight. That's on next. And don't forget that Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That's the late night paper preview show with comedians talking you through the next day's top news stories. I'm going to be hosting tonight. See you at 11 o'clock. And thanks for joining us for Free Speech Nation.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. We're looking ahead to the new week. For most of us, it's going to stay changeable. Some further spells of sunshine, but also some further rain at times. So as we end Sunday, we've got this weak weather front, which will gradually spread its way a little bit further eastwards. A ridge of high pressure trying to build in for Monday. It may well just settle things down briefly. But as we end Sunday, you can just see that weather front just gradually working its way eastwards. Rain very patchy on either side. We'll see plenty of clear spells, and then under the clear skies we may just see some patchy mist and fog. For most towns and cities, however, temperatures staying comfortably in double figures. So as we start Monday, a bank holiday for most of us, a bright start for a lot of us actually. It's still this area of cloud across central areas, and that will just spread its way a little bit further eastwards. And as we go into the afternoon, actually many parts seeing some cloud around, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce some showers, mainly focused across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. For most, it's a warmer feeling day, could see highs reaching around 21, 22 down towards the southeastern corner. Into Tuesday, a very similar day. A lot of dry weather around, but there will be some showers. This line of showers will just gradually spread its way a little bit further southwards as we go through the course of the day, and then later on, some blustery showers working into the far northwest of Scotland. Wednesday, similar still, but then on Thursday, we could just see a longer spell of rain arriving from the west throughout the day.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you